Lilith explained, the first woman or the first queen of hell? We are told a single, sanitized version of creation. A story of Adam, of Eve, of a rib, a serpent, and a forbidden fruit. It is a story of obedience, paradise, and punishment. But beneath the surface of this accepted narrative, another older and far more dangerous tale lingers. A story that has been erased, rewritten, and buried beneath centuries of myth and fear. It is the story of the woman who came before Eve. The woman who was not made from man, but as his equal. The woman who did not bend, who did not submit, who dared to speak the unutterable name of God, and in doing so, was cast not just from the garden, but from the pages of history itself. Her name was Lilith. Today, we part the mists of time and censorship to uncover her story. This is not just the tale of the first woman. It is the tale of the first exile, the first grieving mother, and the first soul to find that when heaven casts you out, hell will sometimes offer you a throne. Welcome to Mythos Unveiled. Today, we seek to explain Lilith, not as the demon she became, but as the woman she was, and the queen she was forced to be. In the beginning, when the world was new and the ink of creation was still wet upon the fabric of reality, the Creator shaped humanity from the dust of the earth. The story we know tells of Adam, the first man, formed alone in the Garden of Eden. But the older whispers, the texts that were hidden away, tell a different story. The Creator shaped not one being, but two. From the same dust, with the same breath of life, under the same divine gaze, man and woman were created simultaneously. He was Adam, and she was Lilith. She was not made from his rib, a mere appendage to his being. She was not a fragment of his soul, an afterthought to cure his loneliness. She was whole just as he was. They were two halves of a perfect whole, equal in origin, equal in form, and, she believed, equal in spirit. At first, the Garden of Eden flourished in a state of perfect, harmonious balance. The rivers shimmered like molten silver, flowing with milk and honey. The air sang with the voices of unseen, benevolent creatures. The trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge, stood at the center of the garden, their fruits untouched, their secrets safe. There was no suffering, no toil, no death. There was only the warm presence of the Creator and the innocent, shared existence of the first man and the first woman. But beneath this veneer of absolute perfection, a subtle, yet fundamental, dissonance began to unravel the harmony. Adam, having been named first, saw himself not as an equal partner, but as a master. He saw himself as the ruler of all that had been given to him, including the woman who walked by his side. He was the namer of the beasts, the tender of the garden, and he expected Lilith to be a part of that dominion, to be subservient to his will. The conflict, when it came, was not over a great cosmic matter, but over the simple yet profoundly symbolic act of physical union. When they lay together, Adam insisted that he should be on top, that it was his natural right as the man, the dominant figure. And Lilith refused. "Why must I lie beneath you?" she asked, her voice not filled with anger, but with a clear, unwavering reason. "I will not. We are equals. We were both created from the same earth, and therefore we are the same." This simple, powerful declaration of her own inherent worth was an act of rebellion that the nascent world was not prepared for. Adam was stunned, then angered by her defiance. He saw her claim of equality not as a truth, but as a transgression. He demanded her submission. He called upon the Creator, believing that his divine Father would surely correct Lilith, would soften her spirit, would make her the obedient, subservient wife he believed she was meant to be. But Lilith did not wait for judgment. She would not allow her fate to be decided by a conversation between her husband and her God. She would make her own choice. She would forge her own path. In a moment of supreme, desperate defiance, she did the unthinkable. She spoke the ineffable name of God, the Shem HaMephorash, the name not meant for mortal lips, a name whispered only in the highest celestial halls, a name that held the very power of creation itself. The moment the sacred syllables left her tongue, the Garden of Eden trembled. The trees recoiled as if struck by a silent wind. The sky darkened, and a terrible, divine power surged through her. She had invoked the ultimate authority, and in doing so, had severed herself from the ordered world she had been created for. And just like that, she was gone. Lilith had not been cast out. She had ripped herself free. The great, invisible gates of Eden slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. No mortal could return from such an exile. She had not only been banished from paradise. She had, in that moment, been erased from its official history. In her place, a new, more compliant woman would be created, one born from Adam's own body, forever bound to him, a testament to the order that Lilith had defied. But Lilith, the first woman, the defiant one, was now in exile, cast into the wild, unknown, and dangerous world outside the garden's protective walls. The wilderness was no paradise. There were no shimmering rivers, no benevolent creatures, no shade from the ever-present, judgmental eye of the sun. There was only a vast, scorched, and endless expanse, a world that God had not yet finished, where the wind howled like a starving beast. She cried out, but no voice answered. The sky had no mercy. The ground offered no kindness. She was utterly, terrifyingly alone. Yet, even in that crushing silence, something stirred. The air grew heavy, thick with a presence that had no shape, no form, only a primordial hunger that had waited for an eternity. The world outside the garden was not empty. It was filled with the things that had been cast out before her. The shadows, the formless spirits, the chaotic energies that had no place in the ordered world of creation. And they sensed her. They recognized her defiance. They recognized her as one of their own. She made her way to the shores of the Red Sea, a place that, in later lore, would be thought of as a borderland, a place teeming with demonic spirits and restless ghosts. The heavens, however, had not forgotten her. The divine order would not let such a profound act of defiance go unanswered. 3 divine messengers, the angels Sainwa, Sansanoi, and Samangeloff, were dispatched. Their forms were carved from celestial fire, and they descended with wings like molten gold, their eyes burning with the authority of the Creator. They found her on the desolate shore, a lone figure against a blood-red sea. Their voices thundered across the wasteland. Lilith, the Creator commands you to return to Eden. Return to your husband. But she only laughed, a sound that was no longer human, a sound that held the bitterness of the salt sea and the freedom of the howling wind. Return, she called back. Return to the cage. Return to the man who demanded I lie beneath him. Return to the paradise that was never truly mine. I will not. The angels warned her. You defy heaven. You reject the mercy of your Creator. If you do not return, a terrible punishment will befall you. For every day that you remain in exile, 100 of your children will die. This was the decree, a curse of unimaginable cruelty, a punishment designed to break her spirit through an eternity of grief. She was being offered a final choice: submit and return to a life of subservience, or suffer a fate worse than any death. Lilith stood, her face turned towards the dark, churning water, and she did not hesitate. She spread her arms wide, embracing the darkness that had begun to pulse beneath her skin, the ancient, formless things that whispered to her from the shadows. The wind whipped her hair, and the air around her twisted, the very fabric of creation bending at the edges. She would not be tamed. She would not bow. And for that, she would be cursed. She would become a mother of countless children, and she would be forced to watch them die, day after agonizing day. The decree was sealed. The heavens turned their backs. The angels departed, leaving Lilith alone, not just in body, but in a soul now condemned to an eternity of loss. The sands of the desert shifted beneath her feet, as if the very earth itself recoiled from what she had become. But she did not weep. Not yet. She did not grieve. She only smiled, a terrible, broken smile. "They believe they have punished me," she whispered to the wind. "They think exile is suffering. But I have seen the truth beyond their ordered laws. I have become what they fear most. I am free." And so, she walked into the darkness, not as a fallen woman, but as the first exile, the first rebel, and the soon-to-be mother of a legion of ghosts. Lilith wandered beyond the edge of the known world, into the desolate lands where the earth cracked beneath the weight of a profound and eternal silence. The sun bore down like an unblinking, judgmental eye, and the air shimmered with a heat that burned flesh and bone alike. This was no land for the living. Days passed, or perhaps years, or perhaps centuries. Time held no meaning in her endless exile. Hunger gnawed at her. Thirst scraped her throat raw. But something far worse, far more transformative, crept beneath her skin. It was a change, slow and irreversible. The desert was reshaping her. Her body, once sculpted from the same sacred dust as Adam's, no longer obeyed the laws of man or of Eden. Her skin, once soft, grew cool and pale beneath the moonlight, untouched by warmth, resistant to the sun's fire. Her breath, once steady, became something less human, less mortal. The wind carried whispers to her, not words, but voices old and restless, calling her name from the rocks and the sand. The spirits of the forgotten, the formless things that had been cast into shadow long before her own exile, had found her. She should have feared them. Any mortal would have cowered and gone mad before such unseen, ancient horrors. But Lilith was no longer merely mortal. She had spoken the ineffable name. She had torn herself from the ordered fabric of creation. She listened to them, and they spoke of things older than the garden, things that existed before Adam, before the first dawn. They spoke of beings that had been cast into the shadows, into the void, long before her own defiance. And now they welcomed her as their own. The whispers coiled around her like unseen, spectral hands, changing her, claiming her, empowering her. Her feet no longer left prints in the sand. The hunger inside her no longer felt human. It was a deeper, more profound craving. Her voice, when she spoke, carried an echo of something deeper, something ancient. Lilith was no longer simply a woman. She was becoming something else, a vessel, a gateway, and she was not barren. In the desolate wilderness, she found new consorts among the shadows, the demons, the fallen spirits, and she bore children, countless children. The Lilin they would be called, born of shadow and defiance. They were her joy, her only comfort in a world of endless grief. But heaven does not break its promises. The curse was absolute. One by one, day by day, her children were taken from her, stolen away before they could take their first true breath. Each night, she felt 100 of them slip away, their fragile life forces pulled into the void by the unseen, merciless hands of the angels sent to enforce her punishment. Their faint, unheard cries filled the wind, a sound that only she, their mother, could hear. For the first time since her exile, Lilith fell to her knees upon the cold desert sand. But she did not pray. She did not beg for mercy. She cursed. Her grief, a force as vast and as powerful as an ocean, did not consume her, transformed her. Her sorrow became a whetstone, and on it, she sharpened her rage into a razor's edge. She was not just a woman cast aside. She was not just a name forgotten. She was now a vessel for a vengeance as deep and as old as the world itself. If she could not have her own children, then no other mother would ever rest in peace. This was the birth of the legend, the birth of the terror. The first night was quiet, the second, restless. By the third, the whispers began in the world of men. Mothers, in their homes, in the very cradle of civilization that Lilith had been cast out from, began to speak of shadows creeping through the cracks in their doors. They spoke of cribs that rocked without reason, of a sudden, inexplicable chill in the nursery, of cold, unseen fingers brushing against the soft skin of their sleeping infants. And in the darkness, a name was whispered, a name carried on the fearful breath of mothers. Lilith. It spread like a sickness, a contagion of fear. Some called her a thief in the night, a demoness that slithered through the darkness to steal the precious breath from the mouths of innocent newborns. Others, those who knew the older, more tragic whispers of her story, believed she did not take them out of cruelty, but out of a terrible, gnawing hunger, an insatiable void left by the 100 children she lost each and every day. She was trying to replace her own, trying to fill the emptiness, if only for a moment. Whatever the truth was, the result was the same. No home was safe. No child was secure. Fathers carved protective symbols into their doorways, the names of the 3 angels who had delivered her curse. Sainwa, Sansonoi, Samangeloff. They whispered prayers into the wind, wore amulets inscribed with these angelic names, believing they would hold her at bay. But Lilith did not fear their charms. She did not fear their prayers, for she was born of a defiance that transcended fear. She had become the very thing they prayed against. The nights grew longer in the hearts of men, the air in their homes heavier. It was no longer just fear that filled their houses. It was certainty. Lilith was no myth. She was real. She was watching, and her grief, her hunger, would never be satisfied. They had silenced her children. They had thought she would fade into the desert, into grief. But she had learned something far greater than sorrow, far more powerful than defiance. She had learned that fear is a cradle, a kingdom, and she was now its eternal, weeping, and terrible mother. The whispers about Lilith no longer belonged only to mothers in their nurseries. Men, too, began to fear the night. At first, they spoke of shadows that moved where no light could touch, of unsettling dreams that left them breathless, drained, and filled with a strange, inexplicable weakness. Then the stories changed. They became more intimate, more terrifying. They no longer feared what lurked outside their homes. They feared what entered their beds. Lilith did not come with fire and fury. She did not come with claws and fangs. She came with a whisper, a presence at the very edge of sleep, a touch so gentle, so fleeting, it felt like a dream. Her voice was not a scream, but a sigh, a haunting, seductive melody in the darkness. And once a man heard it, once he felt her presence, he was never the same. She became a symbol of dangerous, untamed, and forbidden sexuality, one capable of luring men into her grasp while they slept, in the vulnerable space between waking and dreaming. She did not take them by force. She did not need to. Men sought her out in their dreams, some without even knowing it. They were a world of order, of rules, of wives and duties. She was the chaos they secretly craved. They spoke her name without fear in the depths of their subconscious, intoxicated by the promise of a pleasure beyond the mundane world of the waking. But those who dream of Lilith do not wake untouched. The pleasure she offered was a lie, a beautiful poison. Some never woke at all. Their life force simply drained away in the night, leaving behind a cold, empty shell. The first to disappear were the lonely, the restless, the men who spent their nights chasing desires they could not name. They would be found in the morning, their hearts having simply stopped, a look of ecstatic terror frozen on their faces. Then came the ones who spoke of her willingly, boastfully, in taverns and marketplaces. They claimed she had kissed them in the dark, her lips as soft as smoke, her body pressed against theirs like a fevered, beautiful hallucination. But the pleasure was a trap. They wasted away. Their strength faded with each passing night. Their eyes grew hollowed, their breath labored. They swore to their wives and their priests that they would resist, that they would fight the temptation. But when the night came and the world grew quiet, they longed for her touch, for the escape she offered. For the first time, men, the rulers of the ordered world, knew what it meant to be powerless. They carved the same angelic symbols into their doorways, just as the mothers had before them. They whispered the same protective prayers, bound charms around their wrists. But no amulet can protect a man from his own deepest desires, because Lilith did not force herself upon them. She only waited. She waited for their weakness, for their loneliness, for their longing, for the moment they closed their eyes and, in the secret heart of their minds, let her in. And once she entered a man's dreams, she never truly left. The men of the villages, the cities, even the holy temples, all began to carry her mark. Some in the haunted look in their eyes, some in their hollowed faces, and some in the strange, restless children born months later. Children with an unnatural beauty, with eyes that seemed too old, too wise. Children who did not belong entirely to the world of men. These were the first of her human-born offspring, a new lineage to carry her defiance and her sorrow into the world. They called her temptation. They said she stole what was never hers. But Lilith knew the truth. She took nothing. She only gave them what they truly, secretly, desired. And when they woke, they knew it too. They were never just dreaming. Lilith had been called many things in her long exile. Demoness, temptress, child stealer, mother of monsters. But now, she was becoming something far greater. She was no longer a whispered curse, a figure of folklore. She was a force, power. The shadows that once clung to her in the desert like a prison now knelt at her feet like servants. The darkness that had once threatened to consume her had not broken her. It had crowned her. She was no longer merely an exile. She was a queen, deep in the unseen realms, in the spiritual underworld that exists alongside our own. Where no mortal dares to tread, Lilith took her throne. She did not take it by mercy, not by inheritance, but by right of her own immense suffering and indomitable will. The forgotten spirits, the children of the night, the formless beings that heaven had cast aside, they all gathered at her feet. She was their kin, their champion, the one who had defied the great order and had not only survived, but had thrived in the darkness. She ruled without chains, without masters, without husbands. She ruled as she had always meant to, alone, and as an equal to all. But she was not without an equal in the shadows. There was one who did not fear her, who did not cower in her presence. One who had walked a similar though different path of exile. One who had also turned his back on heaven's rigid decree. His name was Samuel. In some tales, he is an archangel, the angel of death. In others, he is the serpent from the garden, the great adversary, Lucifer himself. He was the one who had whispered rebellion into the ears of the fallen. He was the one whose tongue withered life itself. He found her in her dark kingdom, and he did not offer her salvation, for she needed none. He did not offer her love, for her heart was filled with an eternal grief. He offered her a partnership, a union of two great, defiant powers. He offered her an alliance. Side by side, they became something terrible and beautiful, a divine corruption, an unholy balance. He brought the finality of death, and she brought the chaotic allure of desire. He ended life, and she, through her unions with demons and men, created something new in its place, something monstrous. Their children were not born of flesh, nor of light. The Lilim, creatures of the night, beautiful and terrible, neither fully demon nor fully human nor fully divine. They carried the insatiable hunger of their mother and the cold, silent cunning of their father. And when they rose from the shadows, even the angels of heaven turned their gaze away in fear. The heavens did not challenge her reign. They did not dare. Her power, born of grief and fed by desire, was now too great. Her name was carved into ancient tongues, spoken only in fear, written on amulets only to keep her at bay. She was no longer a woman. She was no longer a myth. She was a queen, and even the gods on their golden thrones trembled when they remembered her name. They thought she would fade, that she would be swallowed by the dark. But the dark does not consume her. It bows before her. She had no need for their paradise, for she had built her own terrible, beautiful kingdom in hell. Time should have erased her. The gods, the scribes, the prophets, they had all tried. They had rewritten the world, forging new stories of creation to bury her name beneath layers of myth and fear. A new woman, Eve, was given her place in the official history, a woman born of man, for man. New names replaced hers. New tales shaped creation in ways that suited the new divine order, an order where woman was subordinate to man. But Lilith did not fade. A name once spoken can never be truly erased. Her name lingered. It lingered in the spaces between prayers, in the secret fears of new mothers. It lingered in the silence before a child's first cry, and in the darkness that stretched beyond the reach of the campfire's light. She had become more than a story. She had become a warning, an archetype. Lost over the centuries, her story layered and full of contradictions. She has been seen as a demon of the night, a queen of destruction, a seductive, life-draining threat. And yet, for others, she became something else entirely. Not a demon, not a villain. An icon, a symbol of rebellion, of fierce independence, of feminine power that refuses to be subjugated. She became a reminder that submission is a choice, not a law, that exile is not always the end, but sometimes a terrible, painful, and necessary beginning. That power does not belong solely to those who write the histories and the laws. Lilith was never truly destroyed because she had never been just flesh and blood. She was an idea. She was fire. She was hunger. She was defiance. She was the first sin, a sin that had never been repented. She was the first wound in creation, a wound that had never been allowed to heal. She was the shadow that the first light had cast, a shadow that could therefore never disappear. She is still out there, in the dark places of the world, on the edge of our dreams. She is waiting, and one day, when the world has forgotten the true price of order, when the chains of old laws have become too tight, perhaps she will return. They call her forgotten. They call her lost. But her name is still spoken. Her story is still told. And a name that is remembered, a story that is told, never truly dies. Some stories are buried for a reason, not because they are untrue, but because the truth they contain is too powerful, too dangerous to be remembered. Thank you for walking in the shadows with us. If this unveiling of a forgotten queen has captured your imagination, show your support by liking this video, subscribing to Mythos Unveiled, and hitting the notification bell so you never miss another journey into the heart of our most forbidden legends. Who is the most powerful and misunderstood woman in all of mythology? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, remember that the stories that are erased are often the ones we need to hear the most.